Hello and welcome to Wednesday Wisdom with Lieutenant General Vincent Stewart. Please welcome INSA President Suzanne Wilson Heckenberg.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for Wednesday Wisdom. We are pleased to welcome one of our community's most respected leaders and a long-standing friend of INSA's to the program this afternoon. Today's conversation is an important one for our community to lean in on. We will address historical barriers as well as the current efforts by the military and intelligence community to effect structural and policy changes that foster equal, inclusive, and equitable workplaces. But before we begin, let me make a few housekeeping notes. First, we hope to make this conversation today as interactive as possible. Please submit your questions through the question box on the right side of your screen. We will do our best to get to all of your questions today. And we are pleased to welcome members of the press to the call today. As a reminder, this program is on the record and will be available on our website later this week. I am humbled to be able to moderate this conversation. Lieutenant General Vincent Stewart, who was retired from the U.S. Marine Corps in April 2019 after more than 38 years of commissioned service, is joining us this afternoon. On General Stewart's final tour of duty, he served as the Deputy Commander of U.S. Cyber Command. Prior to that assignment, he served as the 20th Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, culminating an intelligence career by overseeing the global defense intelligence enterprise, supporting customers from the President to the troops deployed around the world. In his other general officer assignments, General Stewart served as the Commander, Marine Corps Forces Cyberspace Command, and Director of Intelligence for the U.S. Marine Corps. Among his many awards and decorations are the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, the Navy and Marine Corps Distinguished Service Medal, and the Defense Superior Service Medal. Welcome to today's program, General Stewart.
Suzanne, it's great to be here. Hope you can hear me okay. I wish I'd known the media was going to be here. I might have said no. I'm only kidding. I love the media.
Great. So we just sent you a camera request. It should have popped up on your screen. And if you want to accept that camera request, then we can see the real you.
How's that?
That's great. That's great. So we had the pleasure of chatting for a little while last week, and we have promoted today's conversation around diversity and inclusion. But I understand that you often prefer the term equity. And so I wanted you to take a moment and explain that preference to us and kind of the reasoning behind it and enlighten our virtual attendees this afternoon.
Yeah, again, thanks for giving me a platform to talk about diversity. I think far too often we check the block on diversity. It's the easy part of the mission. I need 2 of these and 3 of those and 4 of those, and so it becomes a numbers game. What I want to do, though, is I want 2 things. One, I want the members who join the team to feel a part of the team. So that's the inclusion part, that you're comfortable with having a seat at the table, you're welcomed at the table, your voice is heard at the table. What I don't see quite as much is the parallel growth of diverse organizations, diverse individuals. So we tend to recruit a large number because we said if we only got 2 last year and we recruited 100, if we recruit 200, we'll get 4 next year. But if we don't think our way through how we grow and sustain that 100 or 200 or whatever the magic number is, by giving them equal opportunities, and not because we want to create a greater advantage, but just recognizing that it is a struggle to be equal in the workplace. And I don't care what anybody says. I mean, we're all well-intentioned, but the reality is when we look at promotion, we don't see equity in promotion. We don't see equity in recognition and awards. We see something just a little bit lower. And so if you're not giving equal opportunities and equal treatment and equal promotion, you're going to have a middle group of folks who are going to go back to their homes and say, you know, I don't want to work for company X because I'm not getting treated as fairly as the next person. So again, diversity is really easy. Inclusion is challenging because you've got to create an environment. Equity means you've got to be deliberate about how you recognize, promote, and advance those people in your organization.
So along the lines of recognizing and promoting, you know, I hear from some folks in human capital and across the intelligence community that, you know, we have a problem with recruiting diverse candidates in the intelligence community. Then some people say, well, really, it's that mid-level that we're struggling with. And then yet others say that we don't see enough diversity at the top, so that the younger individuals in the workforce can aspire to be or emulate what other leaders have accomplished. In your opinion, is it all three? Is there a particular void somewhere that you have observed throughout your career, or has that evolved some over the years?
Yeah, it is a little bit of all of them. If I have a regret for leaving the service, it's that my picture doesn't go up on the wall anywhere anymore. And it's not because I need my picture on the wall, but because I want someone to look up on the wall and go, holy cow, he looks like me. I can be a picture on the wall also. And so I was recently back at DIA and I'm looking at the previous leaders, and there I was. And I thought, I do really hope that someone's looking at that picture and going, you know, Vince Stewart made it, and he's not as smart as I am. I can make it too. But you don't get there if you don't cultivate that middle group. That middle group are your best recruiters. That's the group that's going to go back to your organizations, go back to their towns and villages, and go, there are opportunities at, pick your three-letter agency. Oh, by the way, your three-letter agency is not spying on you. It's not a bad entity. It's actually working for the good. Because some of that is the mythology that's out there, that our intelligence agencies are spying on certain demographics, and therefore we shouldn't trust them. So it starts by recruiting enough people, making deliberate attempt, retaining that middle group. And oh, by the way, yes, they need Vince Stewart's picture on the wall to say, I can be like him.
Well, and to your point, I think disproving some of the myths and stereotypes of the community would help a great deal as well. So the IC generally is fairly slow for cultural change, according to some folks. What can IC leadership do to make the necessary cultural changes needed to have some uncomfortable conversations regarding inclusion and national security? And you and I talked a little bit about sometimes you've got to get uncomfortable in order to implement change. And sometimes it's hard to talk about things, especially if you don't have any empathy or you've never walked in someone's shoes. So how can leadership make those sorts of small step type changes?
Well, the consistency helps. So you can't have a reaction to a George Floyd, get fired up about it for 6 months, and then go, okay, all is well now because nothing's happened. It has to be a continuous. It's just like anything else. The organization will emphasize the things that the leader emphasizes. And so if the leadership isn't going, this is an issue, I want to make myself accessible, I want to make my leadership team accessible, I want to do this in such a way that you trust me to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And that's the hard part.
It is.
And sometimes we jump into the hard conversation, you know, hey, why did you? I tell folks, go to lunch with people, go to breakfast with them, get to know them, and then be receptive to the ideas and the issues. But it means building trust, not going on the defensive as soon as someone raises the issue, listen. God gave us 2 ears, one mouth. Listen twice as much as we talk, is my theory. And just be open to the conversation. Far too often we get on the defensive. I'm either a victim or I'm being accused of something that neither myself nor my family has been involved in. And so we don't even have the conversation. We talk past each other instead of talking to each other. Some of it, sometimes we just gotta shut up, listen, let it percolate a little bit, and then come back with a response. But if we're playing victim and we're playing the one who's the perpetrator of the victimhood, then we can't even get conversation going. And this transcends diversity. This is leadership, creating an environment of trust, creating an environment where people will say, "Hey, Emperor, you got no clothes on." But if you shoot that person in the head when they say, "Emperor, you got no clothes on," guess what? They're never going to have that conversation again. So this is not just about diversity. This is about creating an environment of trust, collaboration, and sharing of information. So if you can pull that off, you can do well in your organization also.
Well, these do sound like actionable small steps that everybody within their organizations can utilize. And you mentioned being intentional about reaching out to folks to connect over coffee or lunch. And hopefully, as things continue to open up, we can do those things more in person. And also scheduling virtual connects, I think, is helpful as well. But just being very intentional about connecting with our peers and leaders within the workforce. So it was almost a year ago, as I understand it, that you published an op-ed in the Cipher Brief. And it was entitled, "Please Take Your Knee Off of Our Necks So We Can Breathe." And we have the op-ed available in our portal here for folks to access if they did not have an opportunity to read it. It was an impactful and powerful op-ed. I read it shortly after you wrote it, and then I recently read it again in preparation for today's conversation. I wanted to ask you, and sometimes we have to get uncomfortable, but I wanted to ask you, do you think that justice was served in the conviction of Derek Chauvin, and how do we measure that moving forward?
Yeah, first, the op-ed was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was emotionally draining to recount some of the things that I experienced and try to put it in a context where others who didn't experience the things I experienced could kind of get inside that vulnerable space. But I tell you, there isn't a person of color who couldn't recognize either their life or their children's life in that op-ed. So it was not just real for me, it was real for such a large portion of our society. But the hardest part of writing that was thinking about my grandson, who may still face the challenges that I faced growing up, for no other reason but the color of his skin. And you've seen it so many times, and you recognize that if there wasn't a camera or cameras filming that incident, it would have been recorded as counterfeit individual arrested and died in prison from heart attack. And we would have walked away from George Floyd's death. Here's what's been hard for me. Has justice been served? In the context of the law, he was tried by a jury of his peers, found guilty, and therefore there is justice. Now, if it holds up in court, that's a whole other discussion. What I don't want folks to believe, though, is that this one data point means that there is justice across the community. We have many data points that shows the social injustice. We have a case now where someone has been tried and convicted That is one data point. What I want to see is all of those who are abusing people of color, all of those who have been arrested and pending trial, get the same level of justice. And so we now have a set of data points that suggest that we're turning the corner. And it has to be sustained. The abuse has been sustained for years. The justice must be sustained. Otherwise, we'll do this, we'll convict 2 or 3 people, and we'll go back to the same injustice that we've seen. So I want to see more than one data point. And I don't know, I've wrestled with, is it something we celebrate? Is it something it is one data point, and I need to see a whole lot more.
Well, I appreciate your candid response. And again, if folks have not had the opportunity to read the op-ed, it is available here on the portal, and it's definitely a very impactful and powerful op-ed, and we appreciate your making yourself vulnerable. I can imagine it was very difficult, as you said, to write. So as I understand it, when you were barely a teenager, you immigrated from Jamaica to, I believe, Chicago. And it sounds as though your mother kind of paved the way for you as far as getting to the States first, maybe, and working really hard to ensure that you could join her. And we just celebrated Mother's Day, a lot of us. And so I just wanted to ask you what, and I know it'll probably be hard to narrow it down, but what is probably one of the primary values or leadership tenets that your mother instilled in you as a young boy?
Yeah, my mom passed away 2 years ago, or now maybe 3 years. But my mom was my hero. And I could not speak at a promotion where I was getting promoted or a recognition and start talking about my mom without, my eyeballs starting to sweat just a little bit. So I would generally avoid talking about her. There's an expression, there's saying in Jamaica that him so lazy, he only has one job or 2 jobs. So my mom taught me about working hard. She talked about committing to a thing and doing the very best that you can at it, being the best at it. She emphasized education, not just getting a bachelor's degree, but lifelong reading, lifelong learning, and would often say things like, you can go anywhere and do anything if you pick up the right book. So if you want to go to Spain, you can read about Spain. If you want to know what Franklin Delano Roosevelt was, you can pick up a series of books. So she emphasized lifelong learning, emphasized hard work, and being the best in the business that you're in. I didn't do any or all of them very well, but those are the things that she emphasized. And this Mother's Day was hard because we miss her a great deal, but we still have great stories to tell, and she's missed.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned that she encouraged you to read, and we talked a little bit about last week some books that you were reading, and you mentioned 1 or 2, and then one you mentioned that you needed to finish it before we talked today. But could you share with our attendees 1 or 2 books that you've read recently or that you intend on finishing?
I'm reading China Military Power right now. It's a DIA product. It's amazing how many clients are interested in what's going to happen with China next. And so I'm reading that intently. But I didn't get to finish it. I'm reading The Ugly American. And oftentimes we misunderstand the title of that book. But part of that is about how we win hearts and minds, and not just because we've been in Afghanistan and Iraq, but it really kind of takes me back to, where does America fit in the global order in the 21st century? Who do we want to be? What is the image that we want to project, and how do we do that? So I'm using The Ugly American to to think about America's future in the 21st century. And then I'm reading the Marine Officer's Guide because I've forgotten all the stuff I should be doing from a social standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. And so I'm going back to Second Lieutenant Stewart, reading the Marine Officer's Guide. So those are the two that are on my nightstand these days. Unfortunately, I don't get to read more than about 5 to 10 pages a day, but I'm working my way through.
Well, you said your mother instilled in you, having 2 to 3 jobs. And I know since you've left public service, you have at least 2 or 3 jobs. So I can imagine reading is sometimes a luxury, but glad to know you can knock out 10 pages or so a day. So I would ask the folks behind the scenes at IMSA if they could put the names of the books that General Stewart referenced in the chat, and folks can take a look at that and consider reading them as well. So I'm going to get on to audience questions in a moment. We had, gosh, at least 20 that were submitted before this event, and I see more rolling in, so keep them coming. But wanted to ask you, DIA has, I believe, 7 employee resource groups for LGBTQ employees, people of color, people with disabilities. When you were the director, how did you work with these grassroots groups to learn more about the topics that they were addressing and their concerns? And if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were the first agency director to create the Chief Culture Officer position. Is that accurate, or am I misspeaking?
I don't know if I was the first, but yeah, we thought that was important to understand the multiple. So I used to get, so what's the culture at DIA? And then you start going, well, we have 5 services represented, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard. And then you had the analysts versus the collectors. Then you had the combatant commands, all had their own. So the culture, do you have a culture at DIA? Yes. And trying to understand what that culture was. And so we hired Chris, put him in charge, Chris Armstrong, put him in charge of looking at culture. And again, multiple cultures, trying to integrate them, trying to get everybody on the same page. What are the 4 or 5 things that we could say, okay, from a culture standpoint, this is who we are. Let's tell the story about this, tell the story over and over. I mean, it's the tribal leader at the campfire, right? That's how you get the culture, is you tell the story, you build a story, you tell that story, you repeat that story. This is who we are, this is what, and 4 or 5 years later, folks will go, of course we are fill in the blank. But part of this is, how does the leader understand what he or she has, and how do you build a story around what you want to be? And that's what we tried to do. And so I hope I made myself accessible to the groups. I liked to spend time in the cafeteria, having lunch and just talking to people. What they didn't understand, and this is the secret, don't tell anyone, they thought they were getting a lot by talking to me. I was getting energized by talking to them, because I heard what the grassroots of the organization was thinking, what they wanted to accomplish. And so my crew on the 6th floor knew that if I wandered off, if I was having a bad day, I was probably going down to the cafeteria to hang out with my workers. And I was sucking the energy out of them. So I got a whole lot about culture in the cafeteria, and I got a whole lot from Chris Armstrong's effort, and he continues to make a difference nowadays in the private sector.
He does. I never miss an opportunity to plug upcoming INSA events. And when we host the new IC Empowering Women and Engaging Men event in July, Chris will be moderating the conversation on diversity and inclusion, which we are now going to add equity to, based on your feedback from today's conversation. So thank you for those insights. So I've got some audience questions. One here from Marcel Lettra. Hello, Marcel from Lockheed Martin. Marcel asks, have you seen any really creative approaches to fostering diversity and inclusion with industry partners?
Creative approaches. I haven't seen Marcel in a long time. Actually, that's not true. That's I did it very recently. Um, let me ponder that because I see many in industry dealing with the same issues. We know that it's a challenge. We know we ought to be doing more, but far too often when I ask the question, what is your end game? What is the strategic objective? I get silence because we're dealing with events episodically and we're not dealing with it in a long term. At least I have not seen a whole lot of long term strategic. This is where I really want to be with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is how I'm going to get there. Here's the North Star issues. So they're dealing with the same challenges. But let me think about that, Marcel, and I'll come back to you.
Great.
And if I get a good answer, I'll make sure INSA has the answer so we can share it with the community.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. So Robert Milford with NGA asks, what role do non-white citizens have in the elimination and eradication of racism in our society?
That's a great question, Robert. And here's my challenge. If I'm in a hole that has been dug for 200 years and I'm struggling to get out, I need someone to reach a hand down and pull me up. And that seems harsh because I'm putting so much of the onus on the majority to help me, but I can't get out of the hole. I'm reaching up in this hole that has been dug by my history, by my color, by the past, and I really just need someone to reach down and pull me up. So I'm putting the burden a little bit on how does the majority really make the first move? And that's hard because I didn't do anything. I love everybody. I treat everybody fair. My ancestors didn't own any slaves. We were not opposed to civil rights. Why in the world should I be the one who reaches out and helps? Because you're still the majority. And if I'm in a hole, I will not get out just because I've got a shovel and I can dig some more. That's not a great answer, Robert, but those who are empowered are the only ones who can actually share power.
Well, and thank you to Robert for having the courage to ask that question. And I think your response was extremely actionable and hopeful. So Lenny Haynesworth, hey Lenny, haven't seen you in a while. She wants to know, in just a moment, I am searching for, she has a question and I'm searching for it in the portal. And I will, I'll get back to that question in just a moment. So what steps can intelligence agencies take to ensure that all employees receive equal opportunities to be at the table, to make their voices heard, and to receive a fair shot at promotion and other forms of recognition for their service and performance?
Just do it. I know that, it would be very interesting, and I'm trying to do this for World War II. You look at how folks were awarded medals of valor on one ethnic group at a much higher rate than the other ethnic group who is willing to fight and die for their country. We're still seeing the same thing. If you look at the awards process and you just look at demographically, in many organizations, folks of color are not getting recognized. So again, I use the term deliberate. This is not going to happen organically. If it would have happened organically, it would have happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. you got to be deliberate in going, Suzanne is the best candidate. I'm good. Think about this. In the National Football League, if you're going to be a head coach, it helps to be a coordinator, because the coordinators are the ones who you look at first. Whether it's a defense, offense, special teams coordinator. Have we identified those key billets that are going to get you to the top of your organization? And we're deliberate about making sure that there's a diverse population competing for these. I don't need to have a Rooney rule. I just need people to be active about how we slot people for key positions, making sure that everybody is recognized. At least the numbers look right. If it doesn't look right, what the hell are you going to do about it? You can keep admiring the problem and go, oh, look at this. These guys get higher promotion, their award rate than the others. The level of award is better in one group than the others. Well, upgrade it. Demand that people who, we know all the things that will get us promoted. We are doing them. Now we got to do it for everybody. And I don't, so, you know, a lot of people talk about bias and unconscious or conscious. And so, yeah, we can keep talking about that. But now what are we going to do to make a difference? And it's got to be purposeful and deliberate. I've got I've got a what folks call the Stewart tree. The Stewart tree is folks who I've mentored over the years who are doing phenomenal. They're colonels, they're generals, 1, 2, and 3-star generals, and they are a diverse ethnic group. And the reason why they're doing well, some time ago I identified 3 key billets that I thought the future generals would come from. And I was deliberate in assigning folks or getting folks assigned to those key billets, making sure that they had the right sponsors, making sure that they got the right evaluations and awards. And lo and behold, they're, you know, senior colonels and generals. So you got to be purposeful about this.
Absolutely.
One's Vietnamese, one's 2 African Americans, one is a white Anglo-Saxon, and they're all doing wonderful. Okay, I'm done.
So I don't know if you had an opportunity to see the op-ed in the Washington Post today that Sue Gordon wrote, but a gentleman by the name of Stephen J. from NGA wants to thank you for your courage in writing the op-ed that you wrote last year. He said that he saw himself and his experiences in your words, and he wanted to know if you'd had a chance to see Sue Gordon's op-ed, which we will post here in the chat. And if so, if you saw her op-ed, it was related to diversity in the CIA, do you have any comments about it? And if not, then we will email it to you after this webinar.
Yeah, email it to me. I've been on the road scrambling all day. So
I know you've been in meetings all day, and we're glad you could carve out this time for us this afternoon. So this question is from Connor Clark. He thanks you for your time today and wants to know, what can young officers, his goal, and early career civilians, which is his current job, do within the culture of DoD to make a difference?
The fact that you're asking that question, Connor, speaks volumes, because it sounds like someone who wants to make a difference. And again, I think most of the time when I make a real difference, I start with breaking bread. Again, have coffee, go to breakfast, get to know each other, invite some friends of a diverse group, talk about the Baltimore Orioles or some other losing team out there, and build that camaraderie and trust among the group, and then expand from there. That friendship, that relationship, that platform of trust opens up every other possibility. Opens up the possibility of bringing the conversation to the right level where you can talk to each other about what makes you hurt. what causes you pain, and what each of you in the group can then do to solve, or at least put some balm on that which hurts. It creates opportunities for you, if you want to, and if you get to that level, to expand it to your family. And I think sometimes we think we start with this as teenagers or young adults. We really start shaping these ideas at age 5. So when your 5-year-old daughter see you interacting with someone of a different look, then all of a sudden it's like that's okay, and that stays with it. Now, I was watching a program several months ago now, and the mom was so influential with the children and the things that she was telling the children, and it was really racist and xenophobic. And I just know that those children are going to grow up thinking that's the right answer. So as you get the relationship built and you can expand it to the families, and it doesn't have to be sophisticated, a cookout somewhere or a fishing expedition, where your children now start seeing that, yeah, those people are okay. They're, they're going to be okay in our society. And unfortunately, so much of the conversation is about the loss of power. And as we now understand and we talk to each other and we trust each other, and we ask the difficult questions and we answer openly and we share it with our family, we've got a chance long term to get this right. But it's going to be too many more years. I'll be long gone before we get it right.
So, I mean, I really think, to your point, it does start at home at an early age. A lot of these behaviors are learned and from children's parents. So I wanted to move on to another question, and we only have 3 minutes left. I keep looking at the clock, seeing is my clock right? Because this is flown by. But the next question is from Charlie Allen. Hi, Charlie. Thanks for sharing a little bit of your afternoon with us. Charlie asked General Stewart, the IC needs officers who know foreign culture and languages. We have difficulty hiring naturalized Americans who are foreign born. We need them because they have language and understand other cultures, yet getting them cleared for sensitive intelligence is a real problem. How can the IC leaders do better in that respect? Thanks, Charlie.
Hey, Charlie. I knew Charlie would ask a tough question. Because at the end of the day, my son could not get a clearance because he has friends from all over the world. And it would require about 20 pages to list his friends that he's interacted as he did his Persians. Now, he's a naturalized citizen. No, he's a native citizen, born and raised here. But he's got friends in Iran. He's got friends in Romania. He's got friends in, and the IC would look at him in spite of the fact that he speaks 5 languages, including multiple dialects of Persian, Farsi, as a risk. And I don't know the answer to this, Charlie. I don't get it. You're absolutely right. If we're going to know the culture and be at the native language level and get insights, and we can't do it with your standard Caucasian who spent a semester in Nigeria. And we go, oh well, he went to Nigeria for a semester, and now he's got he understands Nigerian, and he's a native, so we can hire him. We are risk averse, and it's, I think, the reason why we don't hire some individuals from foreign countries. But I think we can do this if we can institute continuous monitoring approach. If I spend an extra $200 on my credit card, I get a notification that, hey, you spent 200, your credit score went down 200 points or whatever. There's absolutely no reason why that a reformed security apparatus with continuous monitoring, that we can't have good insights as to what any of our workers are doing. And that will allow us to open up the pipeline to do more naturalized or foreign analysts, collectors, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned culture. I think that culture piece is so important, and you can't get it just spending a semester abroad, as you said. So we started just a couple minutes late, and so I would like to take a couple.
I owe you a couple of minutes. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all, not at all. But I would like to take a couple minutes and see if you have any closing thoughts that you want to share with our virtual attendees. And also just thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I know you had a packed schedule and appreciate your making time for INSA.
Is the intelligence community prepared for competition in the 21st century? We spent the last 20 years or so doing counterterrorism, counterinsurgency. We've not fought a war under where we haven't had air superiority, air supremacy. We've not fought recently without having infrastructure that can support forward operating bases and communications. We've not been in the inside of a weapons engagement zone in forever. The last time any of our servicemen had gone under artillery fire is probably, I don't know, the end of World War II, a little bit of Vietnam. So are we positioned for the deluge of data that we will see going forward? The requirement to move that data as intelligently as possible, the leveraging of open source intelligence, which has a preponderance of what we need to know in that publicly available space, tailored to meet the needs of a range of customers, from borders through targeting individual. Are we prepared to deal with a target set that's not individually based, but is based on a peer or near peer competitor? So go from targeting Osama bin Laden to, we're going to have global competition, and are we prepared for that? Are we prepared for space and counter space? Are we prepared to win decisively in cyberspace if we have to? And if we're not, if the answer to any or all of those is no, we're not, then we need to get to work. Otherwise, we are going to fulfill the idea that we are declining power and should be supplanted by someone who can answer yes to all of those questions. So that's my challenge to the community, and hopefully we'll take on the challenge and find the concept for how we fight and win. And when I say fight and win, I'm not just talking about military capability. I'm talking the full 4 elements of national power. How do we enhance the diplomatic effort? How do we enhance the informational effort? How do we drive the economic piece? And then if those fail, how do we punctuate our effort by having the most capable military force in the world? And I could keep talking about this for hours, but so I'll stop there.
Well, something tells me you'll be receiving another invitation from INSA in the coming months to do just that. So these webinars often end kind of abruptly. I don't get a chance to hand you the coveted INSA Challenge coin, which I think you already have one of, or a parting gift. But I'd like to tell you, I would love, you mentioned going to the cafeteria and how you got more out of those experiences with folks in the workforce. We have 6 grad school interns here at INSA, and when we get back to in-person, if you ever need a dose of energy and vigor, I would ask you to come in and have lunch with them in the fall or winter, or whenever we can get back to some in-person networking. So really appreciate your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
I'm vaccinated, and I prefer whiskey over coins.
Okay, I will make a note of that. So anyway, so I would like to borrow a few words from General Stewart's op-ed. And these words are, who are you lifting up and helping to get across the finish line? What are you doing to affect positive change in America? Encouraging words are nice, but this country needs action. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Looking ahead, on May 18th, CIA's procurement executive, Margaret Augustine will be joining me for a coffee and conversation. On May 19th, we take a virtual road trip to Huntsville, Alabama, an ever-growing intelligence and national security hub. And then on May 25th, Melancy Harris, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Ops and Combating Terrorism, will join us for a coffee conversation. And then on June 1st, we'll hold a Wednesday Wisdom with Melissa Smithlova, Acting Undersecretary for Intelligence and Analysis, Department of Homeland Security. And as always, all these details are on our website. I would ask just take a few moments when the webinar ends and fill out our survey. And this concludes today's program. Stay safe and healthy and have a good evening. And thank you again, General Stewart.